All right, so good morning, Reverend Sheree. Good afternoon, and good day to everybody out there watching our Better Living Conversations. I have the pleasure and the honor of having with me today Reverend Sheree Thompson. She's the Assistant Minister of the Universal Principles Truth out in California. So, Reverend Sheree, thank you for saying yes.
You are so welcome. Thank you for inviting me. You guys have all of those universal, the truth and all that. Ours is understanding principles for better living. We're all under the For Better
Right,
Living banner. Yeah.
Right.
It is. It's a joy to be here, representing the UFBO, representing Up Church, and representing you, just my friend. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So just tell us a little bit about you first before we get started. How did you come into Universal Foundation for Better Living at Up Church?
Other than just it being the right place for me at the right time with the right message, I was in my very early 20s, and I'm still really young, just by the way. I was in my very early 20s, and I just moved out to LA. And I hadn't been a regular churchgoer, but I just felt compelled being out here in Los Angeles that you can just get lost with yourself out here. It's just so many different things to get into. And I was in some crowds and I'm like, this isn't my tribe. And I started going to church. I visited 2 churches. This isn't my tribe. This isn't my tribe. Like, this is my mom's tribe. This isn't my tribe. And a friend invited me to Understanding Principles Church. And Reverend Della was just speaking to me so directly, and I never left. Like, the church hunt ended and I just knew that I was in the right place. The message was it was so true to what I believed, but so different than anything I'd ever heard. And so I just, I knew I was in the right place. I knew, despite that it was a non-conventional church, I knew that this was the place for me to grow. And I've been committed to the ministry. I literally walked through the doors and never left.
Gotcha. Thank you. Well, thank you. So the Reverend Sheree James is your senior minister.
Yes.
And you also serve on the board of UFBL too. Currently, do you not?
Yeah. So I'm on the board. I don't hold an office on the board right now. But I'm on the board of the UFBL, and I also serve as the assistant minister at Up Church, and I run our education department. So I'm busy in the ministry.
Yes, you are. And just recently, since we've had this COVID-19 pandemic, you've been supporting your church and all of the UFBL churches in formulating a game plan to move through this crisis in a healthy way and to reopen. And can you just share a little bit about why you're doing this for us?
So one of the things I do professionally, I'm a communications professional. And I just have been honestly primed for this moment. Like, all of the information that I've learned in my career and what I've been paying attention to over the past 20 years has really been like primed for this moment. And so when I with all the things that I'm doing, because in addition to those roles, I also am a mom of a teenager who is in the college application process. Thankfully, that's over. But in addition to that, I work a full-time job. And so I just felt like, this is why I'm in this role right now. I'm here to support my church community. And so as I was learning and things I knew already, the new things I was learning about this particular crisis, I've got to share this with the UFBL, because this is what we're here for. We're here to support our churches, because we're out here supporting the people. And to be as equipped as you can be, to be as mobilized as we can be as a collective body, I just felt compelled that it was my responsibility to do all I could to help our ministers.
Thank you. And we really appreciate that very much. So tell us, how much responsibility does the church have in providing direct services to the communities?
So that's a very interesting question, because I do believe that there are 2 parts of ministry. And so there's the business of ministry, and then there's just the spiritual aspect of ministry. And as a spiritual leader, it can appear that sometimes those are at odds. And so I believe that it is the ministry's responsibility to be guided by spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And if that guidance is to be directly communicating, directly providing services to the community, then they absolutely need to be about their spiritual business. But if there is another divine assignment for that ministry, they need to be
Right.
about that assignment as well.
Yes.
And so for those ministers who are called to serve the communities in this way, then it is one, not to be overwhelmed or intimidated, but to start where you can
Mm-hmm.
and to begin to feel the need that you can feel. Like it's at the space where you can grow your way to the level of service you want to have, but
Gotcha.
just to begin. So I really
Gotcha.
do believe that it's the call on that ministry. We're all not here to do the same thing, thankfully,
Mm-hmm.
because there's so much to do. There's so
Mm-hmm.
many ways to love people. And so I don't, I get a little defensive of my ministries. And when people are talking about where are the churches, and I'm like, churches are serving in so many different capacities. Some
Right.
of it is just dealing with people and their emotional well-being.
Correct.
And that has nothing to do with providing a physical service, but there's a very important service. Just to remind
Mm-hmm.
them of who God is an
Gotcha.
important service. So,
Gotcha.
mm,
So if I hear you, every church cannot do everything, but every church can do something.
absolutely.
Okay, got you. Great. That's good. So you started out by helping us during this pandemic, this COVID-19 pandemic, and now we find ourselves in the middle of civil unrest and societal unrest. So, how do you think this civil crisis impacts our responsibility to provide a healing place for our communities?
So similar to what I just said about the call on the ministry, there's
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I believe is missing in the midst of this civil unrest is a spiritual component.
Okay.
And I think that there is, I've been talking to friends about this, and when you think about successful civil rights uprisings,
Mm-hmm.
that there was always a spiritual base. There was usually religious leaders coming together involved in some way. And even those religious leaders were praying, and there was an invoking of the spirit that was happening at some level. And this one is, this is where we have an opportunity, is
Yes.
to be that spiritual anchor, because activists burn out. That fire will consume you, and
Yes.
you go from being effective to just being at rage. And there is a spiritual practice I know that we teach that will help you to manage the fire, because when you get that the battle isn't yours, you're just
Yes.
standing there, you're being
Correct.
guided by spirit, then you don't burn out because you're not
Yes.
fueled by that anger. You're
Right.
fueled by the power and the presence of God.
Yes. Amen. I totally agree. So we've been working with reopening. Does this urgent need that's happening right now change our approaches and plans for reopening, you think?
I don't think that we'll see this is such an amazing mix of
Yeah.
of issues. You know what I mean? It's kind of
Yeah.
like, I don't know if you've ever had a pimple outbreak, but it's like every impurity is coming out to the
Yes.
surface.
Correct.
And we're dealing with that. And so I think there's a method to dealing with the issue of how do I keep my community safe in the midst of the coronavirus and COVID-19.
Yes.
Like, how do I keep my community safe? Because that's the primary concern with opening up the facilities.
Correct.
And it's not to say that I don't believe in God. It's not to say that I don't believe in my divine radiant health, but it's to say that wisdom comes to me also in the form of understanding more about how this virus impacts people.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be a good steward of my people. I want to be a good shepherd. So that right there is absolutely the consideration that needs to happen. It will impact reopening. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm a fan. I'm on the conservative side of things. I think
Okay.
that if your ministry can sustain itself online, to do that as long as you can. And then there are services that you may feel more comfortable opening your doors for, like maybe spiritual
Mm-hmm.
counseling or some small prayer circles for the people who just need a direct one-on-one contact. And you can do
Right.
that and practice physical distancing. But for the civil unrest, I think that there is an opportunity for us to just connect with, especially our young people. I think that we may be missing
Mm-hmm.
right now that direct connection with our older teens, our younger 20-year-olds,
Mm-hmm.
who are, dealing with the convergence of pain. Like, it is the pain of the disruption of their every day. It's the pain of the hopelessness of like, what future am I walking into? It's the pain of like, I got this in me, I don't know how. Like, how do I actually get my ideas? How do I get my solutions to be something that people are considering? Like, how do I take over, essentially? It's like they feel this sense of ready to stand up and be adults. And it's like, how do we support them and empower them? I think that that's an opportunity for us.
It is very much, very much. And so as we work with our congregations, as ministers, as leaders, what can we draw on as ministers in addressing our communities during this time? I mean, we got several crises going on at the same time.
The same time, right?
Yes.
This is, okay, so there's two things, right? So there's so much to do. There's so many people that need us, and there's something magical about Sunday service. You can see everybody at one time, and you get to love them and pray with them, and you get to feel their energy. But when you're working virtually, there's a little bit of a different energy that you have to work with. You really got to be in the spirit. Like, you really have to be there.
Yes.
And there's so much to do. And so I think the first thing that ministers need to do is to get their spiritual practice in order. Meaning, how are you, like, you can be so busy in the doing that you don't continue to fill your cup.
So true.
And you'll burn out.
Yes.
So I think that that's, to me, that's the primary thing, because it's the space where you have to, there's so much going on, is that, oh my goodness, I have to let go of my intellect. I have to let go of what I think I know, and really rely on spirit, because these are uncharted waters. And so that the good thing about an uncharted water is that I know that I need divine direction. So it's like, I already know the answer and I know where the answer is, but I have to prime myself to be able to receive it despite appearances. So it's like the same thing we're telling everybody else, we have to be double down in, and very much like, it's like I have to find that structure that protects my sacred time. Correct. I have to find the right level balance in my life, so that I can really take care of myself and to nurture my spirit, so that I can be a better leader, and to be really in tune with with God. And then because you gotta have courage. Like, you're always gonna, as a leader, have something that comes to you as being the primary thing, being important, being a priority, that will either seem nonsensical, or it may seem like, oh, you don't get it, Rev, but it's not for you to get, because this isn't based on what you see.
Yes.
So to stand with that kind of courage amongst your leaders, it really requires you to be completely centered. And
Amen.
that to me, that when it gets busy, I know that ministers are like anybody else. Your practice can suffer from that. And this is where we need to double down.
Yes. So we got to stay centered and grounded. Grounded in the awareness of who we are, grounded in the truth, and just control. I say control what you can control.
Yes.
And let the rest go.
Yes. Yes.
All right. So as we stay grounded as leaders, as ministers, and we are the shepherds of our churches and so forth, what role do you think our churches can play during this time of, we got COVID-19, inequalities of our criminal justice system that our communities are protesting against. So it's really clear that we are really in a state of crisis. So what role can the church itself play during this time?
So I would say the first thing is cooperative prayer. Okay. That there is you think about prayer vigils, you think about, where people come and they do the watch services, and, it's kind of like there's an opportunity for us to remember how powerful prayer is. Yes. And it's our responsibility to do that. It's not the responsibility of the news media. It's not the responsibility of really anybody else. It's our responsibility to 100% do that, come together in prayer and work that principle, work that power. And then I think it's also important that in the midst of those intense prayer experiences, there is this conversation about, what did you get? Because prayer, when your instructions that come from prayer are orders, right? They are things to do. And so it is holding the consciousness, but it's also hearing, you're being guided. And so then I think we can start to coordinate efforts from that space. So it's,
Yes.
if it's a matter of I am praying and what comes to me is an assignment, there's probably someone else to support that or to work with you on that. And I think that we can organize our communities in a way where there may be people who are dealing with, because there are people who are still dealing with food insecurity. There are people who are still dealing with relatives who may be more susceptible to the coronavirus based on certain demographics that you need to tend to. There may be people who are completely angry and just want to be in the streets yelling. Like there are all these different people to take care of, and there is a spiritual solution for each area of these crises. And it's just a matter of getting collectively there so that's, to me, that's the beginning, is to start to pray together. And then and it's like you pray, and I don't mean like a 5-minute prayer, but I mean like we need to really invoke the Holy Spirit of God, like that, just to really like beyond. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with what like the traditional old time, all of that, and nothing wrong with it. It is absolutely effective. And it's like we can take those and use them with the awareness that we have of who and what we are.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, going back to our roots,
Yeah.
Yes, gotcha. I feel you.
So they say the prayer of the righteous availeth much. We can do it.
Amen. Touch and agree. I got you.
Yes.
So what specifically, what has your community, because you are in the LA area, correct? So what has your community done to move through this season that you can share with us here in South Florida, that perhaps is universal and maybe even more specific to your area that you are doing?
So the one thing that we did immediately was to find a way to connect with everybody. Okay. So there were places that we needed to grow in technology. There were some places that we needed to grow in, and then equipping our people for technology. So we had a baseline to create first. And then that began to be, once we saw that was effective, that we're actually reaching people, and then we found the people that were in the gaps. So it was really just kind of collecting our community and saying, we're here for you. And that was the first thing. And that, I've been sharing everything that we do with everybody in our organization. But I think that the most powerful thing that happened is that we had people who took actions in different directions. And so we had a member of our church lead a We Cares program where they identified, they wanted to deal with people who were 65 and over. And to provide them with, they wanted to handle food insecurity that could potentially be arising in that population. And that kind of blossomed. And there's another community that We Cares is looking at now, and looking at how can we support based on we're a small church in numbers. And so it's like we can be powerful where we are. We don't have to say, well, man, if we were a mega church, then we could do this or that. It was to start where we are. And so there are activities. And the other thing that was like surprisingly effective was, in addition to ministers making phone calls, we had our men's ministry just called everybody in our congregation and just said, we checking in, want you to know we love you. Honestly, that was probably one of the most powerful things that we did. And because people felt seen, heard, cared for, and proud of their church, really. Like, like our church is taking care of us so that we can take care of our people, so that we can be active in our communities. And I felt like we were really being of service, reminding them that they're loved, giving them a quick affirmation to work with. And, it was so simple. It wasn't a complex program or anything. It was so simple as calling people, connecting. And those are, to me, some of the most important things we did. Our prayer chaplains did. They got on top of wellness calling and making sure that people got prayer every month. Those things have been honestly the most effective things. And then second to that, or maybe in conjunction with that, is clear communication from leadership to let people know, this is what we're doing. This is your church. We're still here. This is what we're doing for you, meaning that we're committed to this. And then we try to make sure that there was a touch point online every day, so that there's some way for them to plug in, because people are plugged into the news media. They're plugged into their social media feeds. And we needed to give them a place to plug in spiritually. So it just so happened that when the shelter in place order started to happen in LA, we were in the midst of Lent. And our Lenten series is a daily program. So every morning at 7 a.m. Pacific, people could dial into the Lenten experience. And so we started off anchored in this powerful series that helped to kind of frame the way where people were coming from. So that was actually, that gave us, we need to keep a daily touch point, regardless of what it is. And those are some effective strategies that we put in place.
Great. So what I heard from you is 3 C's: communication, care, and compassion.
Yes.
You know, and it's making a difference. Great. Cool. So as we get ready to close this out, Reverend Sheree, what's the one thing that you want everyone to know about how to emerge from this crisis, these times that we're in a sane, peaceful, and whole way? I mean, what can we do to emerge from this on the other side in a healthy way?
So my message is, it's so funny. I was talking to my son about this, and he's like, "Mom, that's going to take forever." And I said that I said, honestly, the opportunity we have here is to remember who we are.
Yes.
That while, like I said, the impurity emerging, that like a pimple.
Yes.
Beneath the surface, in the dark, was the seed of division, was the seed of divisiveness, was the seed of separateness. And it has come to the surface right now. And just like a pimple erupts from the skin, that's what these violent protests are. They are eruptions from from what was underneath the surface. And so we shouldn't be surprised by them. But what we do when you have an eruption from your skin is that you begin to heal it. You begin to put a healing salve over it. Yes. And to me, the healing salve is your spiritual identity, is remembering that you're not the darkness.
Yes.
And so whatever is underneath in the darkness that is coming into light right now, it is coming to the light for you to purify it. Amen. And so the most important thing that we can do right now is remember who we are, that the problem, the crisis, the challenge, whatever it is not bigger than the power and presence of God that you are. Amen. And what we must do is listen to divine direction. Because if we keep listening to instruction from the things that are coming to us in the world, we'll start to, what you hear repeatedly, you begin to learn. Yeah. And so you start learning this message of divisiveness. And so now I want to pump myself up above everybody else. But it is in the oneness that we begin to find our way for harmony right now. And that is not us against them. We're all one in this. Amen. And this is just the darkness come to light. And praise the Lord that it's in the light. Praise the Lord that we have the opportunity right now to choose good, to choose oneness, to choose love. And we all must collectively choose that with our hearts, with our mouth, and get diligent about what we're talking about. Get diligent and intentional about the words that are coming out of our mouth, and check ourselves constantly as we begin. We're not commentaries here. We're not here to say this is the temperature. We're here to set the temperature. And we have to continue to do that day by day, moment by moment. And that's the work. That'll keep you busy all day.
It will. It will. Yes,
that will keep you busy.
All right. You just preached the word there. Amen. All right. All right. So, Reverend Sheree, I really want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day for this interview to share with us a few words of wisdom that can hopefully help us all to lift ourselves up to another level as we move through these times in a healthy way. And I want to give a shout out to Reverend Sheree James and Up Church. And let's just continue to hold hands and continue to work through this together. And we will come out of this on the other side bigger and better than we were. So thank you. Peace and blessings to you. And we will be in touch.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. God bless.
All right. Have a good day.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.